You are listening to Practical and Woo by Mindset and Manifest. My name is Eden, and I invite you to embark on a journey with me to explore the practical and spiritual edges of the unknown for the purpose of allowing you to embody and empower yourself uniquely as you are and to intentionally create and live a life of freedom and fulfillment. Each week, I am going to discuss topics such as energetics, reality creation, manifestation, astrology, tarot, and more to help empower you to live beyond perceived limitations and to practically design your life so it feels like absolute magic every step of the way. Let's dive in. Well, hello, brilliant soul. Last week, I shared with you a hybrid framework borrowing from Don Miguel Ruiz's 4 Agreements and the THINK acronym. For today, I wanted to elaborate on this topic by diving into the myths and misconceptions that sometimes have a tendency to create experiential and also psychological tripwires. My goal for this episode is to massage the places where we may inadvertently limit ourselves when applying this framework, as opposed to liberating our ability to create anything and everything we desire out of life. I want to set you free from the pressure of perfection, any self-censorship that arrives, and guilt spirals that can creep in when these tools are misunderstood. So let's dive in. The first misconception I want to address is the assumption that being impeccable with your word means never speaking a hard truth. This agreement can easily become romanticized into meaning always being kind, sweet, or graceful with your words. And while kindness is a beautiful standard, as we know from the THINK acronym, being impeccable with your word does not mean bypassing truth for politeness or niceties. In fact, being impeccable means being in integrity. It means speaking what's true for you, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's raw, even if it rocks the boat. Here's the nuance. Impeccable doesn't mean perfect. It means intentional. It means asking yourself, is what I'm about to say aligned with who I am and the world I want to live in? Is what I'm about to say aligned with the vision of my highest self and the world I'm masterfully creating? Sometimes being impeccable means expressing your boundaries, naming your disappointment, speaking your grief, saying no. It means not diluting yourself to be more digestible for someone else. The pitfall of buying into this misconception is holding back from authentic expression because you think impeccable means palatable. The invitation here is to speak your truth with clarity and consideration of the THINK acronym without weaponizing your words. Be impeccable with your intention, your vulnerability, and your authenticity. For the next misconception, I want to address how don't take anything personally doesn't mean don't feel hurt or impacted. While the core teaching of this agreement is knowing that people's actions are a reflection of their own lens and perception and not a true reflection of you, it doesn't mean your feelings aren't real, and it doesn't mean that interactions aren't allowed to sting. You're allowed to feel disappointed, hurt, even angry. The key here is learning not to build your identity around that moment, not telling yourself a story about yourself because of these actions. So yes, allow yourself to acknowledge the emotion, let it move through you, and then remember the truth of who you are. The pitfall of believing that you're not allowed to feel hurt because you understand not to take interactions from others personally is a way of gaslighting yourself out of valid emotional experiences. The invitation here is to feel your experience fully and then remember that their behavior doesn't define you. Don't make assumptions doesn't mean that you have to be certain before you speak. This agreement can really trip us up, especially if you've been conditioned, like so many of us, to self-doubt. Yes, making assumptions can create unnecessary suffering. And yes, it's important and helpful to seek clarity. But if you're using this agreement to keep yourself silent until you've figured out everything, you're only separating yourself from your life. Not making assumptions doesn't mean withholding your perspective until it's fully formed. It means being curious rather than conclusive. It means asking questions. It means saying, here's how I interpreted this thing that you said, or this moment that I experienced. Can you help me understand if that's accurate? The pitfall of needing to be certain before you speak is shutting down communication out of fear of being wrong. And the invitation is to don a perspective of curiosity and meet others in the messy middle of uncertain interactions. For the last of the 4 agreements, always doing your best doesn't mean always being productive. Your best is not a measure of how much you produce. It's a reflection of how present, honest, and compassionate you are in any given moment. Your best might look different on a Tuesday afternoon than it does on a Saturday morning. You don't have to be on all of the time. You don't have to run at full capacity to be worthy. And you are not failing if your best today means resting, crying, saying no, or asking for help. The pitfall of believing that always doing your best means to always be productive means that you're measuring your worth by your output, which keeps you on the fast track to disconnection and burnout, which is the opposite of creating an intentional, masterful, and fulfilling life. The invitation here is learning to honor the ebb and flow of your unique capacity. Your best is enough because it's your best. 100% doesn't look the same to everybody, and it also doesn't look the same every day. Now, let's move on to the nuances of the THINK acronym. Using the THINK acronym does not mean you should never say something that could be misinterpreted. THINK is a beautiful framework for intentional communication, and it's most definitely not a checklist for perfect speech. Believing you need to be or speak perfectly creates a pressure and a resistance that likely creates more mistakes than not. Oh my goodness, how many times have I been there? You start second guessing every word, wondering if it's inspiring enough or necessary enough or kind enough. And in the process, you lose yourself. You lose your authenticity. You lose the truth of who you are. Think is not about perfection. It's about presence. It's about pausing before you speak, not silencing yourself completely. It's about asking, am I speaking from fear or from clarity, from ego or from empathy? The pitfall of believing that you need to be perfect at speaking is censoring yourself into silence. And the invitation here is to let the THINK acronym be a filter, not a muzzle. Allow it to be a tool to refine your message, not erase your voice. Another misconception is believing that the THINK acronym is only useful for external communication. THINK is a tool that is useful in navigating how you communicate to others, as well as how you speak to yourself, considering whether or not your internal thoughts are true, helpful, inspiring, necessary, or kind. If you wouldn't say it to a friend, then you shouldn't say it to yourself. The pitfall of believing that the THINK acronym is limited only to external conversation means that you're not accessing a tool that can help you master your internal dialogue as well as your external expression. The invitation here is to make your self-talk a sacred space and practicing this tool by applying it inward. I know this is something that we've addressed quite a bit here on Practical and Woo, and I want to make sure that it's noted that these tools are not only used for the good vibes only crowd, because we're not about excluding vibes here. We're about authenticity and masterful and healthful personal development and manifestation prowess. The Four Agreements and the THINK acronym are spiritual technologies meant to support you in navigating the full spectrum of your life, not just the light and fluffy. They are meant to be used when you're heartbroken, when you're angry, when you're lost. They're not about pretending that everything is fine. They are about staying aligned, even and especially when it's hard. The invitation here is to summon these tools, even and most especially when life gets gritty. That's when they become truly powerful medicine. It's also important to know that practicing these tools doesn't automatically erase conflict from your life. Though wouldn't it be nice if there was a button or a method that could do that? Conflict, however, is a necessary part of being human. You can be impeccable and kind and clear, and people may still misunderstand you. You can avoid assumptions and still be surprised by someone's reaction. You can do your best and still miss the mark. These tools don't erase conflict. They help you move through it with integrity. They help you to grow and appreciate the person that you're becoming and the arsenal of tools that you're acquiring along the way. If you've ever enjoyed collecting things like Pokemon cards or baseball cards or Crazy Bones, then you can imagine the joy of collecting life-affirming experiences and transferable tools. The pitfall of believing that you'll erase all discomfort and conflict from your life if only you practice these frameworks perfectly is that you're using them as armor to avoid discomfort and you're not living your life. The invitation is to let them guide you through the mess, growing into a better version of yourself, as opposed to trying to walk around it. Another misconception is believing that if you break an agreement or miss a letter in the THINK acronym, then you failed. The Four Agreements are not commandments, and the THINK acronym is not a moral code. These are tools for development, not chains of shame. You will forget them, you will fumble, you will say something reactive, take something personally, make an assumption, or forget to be kind. That's not failure, that's life. What matters is the return, the remembrance, the willingness to recalibrate and to repair. At the end of the day, these frameworks are here to support you, not to shame you. The Four Agreements help you to clear away the smoke of illusion so that you can live from the truth of who you are. The THINK acronym helps you to communicate with integrity both inside and outside of yourself. But their power lies not in rigid application. Their power lies in their ability to bring you home to your own wisdom, your own presence, your own creative spark. So let yourself be imperfect. Let yourself grow through practice. Let yourself get messy. Let yourself return to what matters: truth, helpfulness, inspiration, necessity, kindness, impeccability, discernment, clarity, and compassion. You don't need to master these tools overnight, especially. You just need to remember them when it counts, which is the next time that you remember them. Clock that you remembered and then take your next right step from there. And the more you live into them, not as rules, but as guides, as frameworks, the more they begin to live through you. Until next time.